Steve Curtis is a wild man.
Steve is literally the GOAT. You know, he is the greatest of all time when it comes to catamarans.
People have accused him of driving over the top, but he doesn't. He drives to the limit.
There's no one better to be sitting on my left side than Steve Curtis.
He runs the boat so hard and so in control and so calculated.
He's probably one of the most humble human beings you'll ever meet.
Everything's left out there on the race course. You know, there's no ifs, ands, or buts, or could have beens, or what ifs. You know, it's what was done is done.
No, I think when you do a sport, you do it to your maximum, and you're thinking of today, and you're thinking of a long term. You know, how am I going to be when I'm 60? You wouldn't do anything, you know, but right now I couldn't care what I'm like when I'm 60. You know, I want to have some fun now and go out and win some races.
So introduce yourself to me. You never met me before.
Yeah. Hi, Matt Trudeau. I'm Steve Curtis. Long time, very old offshore powerboat racer. Looking forward to having an interview with Speed on the water.
So tell me about growing up in the boat.
When I was first born, we first lived in a place called Putney, which is right on the River Thames. My dad had a boat dealership, Owen's Boats, and raced himself. My father used to race tunnel boats and offshore powerboats. Along the way, I got to meet all of the, you know, the now legends of powerboat racing. You know, my father used to race with Don Arano, was great friends with Sonny Levy, in fact worked with Sonny Levy on many projects. You know, I had the greatest springboard into powerboat racing that a kid could have. It's a lot of hard work. I've probably waxed more powerboats than I've raced in, but yeah, it was fabulous, and you know, I wouldn't have changed a thing for the world. When I was 9 years old, we moved down to the south of England. My father bought a boat yard. He started Cougar Marine. We started building bigger boats down there, which are fairly representative of all these catamarans that you see out here today. Racing's always been in my blood.
He's absolutely amazing. He's so calm, cool, and collected.
I started racing motorcycles when I was 11. I was a factory rider for Suzuki and then a factory rider for Honda.
I wasn't bad, but I always knew I wasn't going to be the best. I remember thinking when I got in a boat, that thing that I think I was missing in motorcycle racing, I felt that I had in powerboat racing.
I started racing offshore powerboats when I was 19. In America, funnily enough, and it was in the wild, crazy days of offshore powerboat racing. Coming from Europe, it was incredible to see these big flash boats show up and these big flash trucks. I think that's what made offshore in the day so popular. I think that one of the major advantages I had when I started racing was I already understood what it took to work on the boat.
What I think makes Steve great is his understanding of what it takes to make the boat do what it's supposed to do and what it takes to keep it from crashing.
By the time I was 21, I was racing a full Class 1 powerboat. In fact, won my first World Championships when I was 21.
When I did it, my whole family was there, which was fantastic. We did it in an aluminium Cougar, so it was nice that it was one of my father's boats. We got a lot of press because I was the first English guy. And then the sad thing about it was the next year I couldn't get a job. So I was a bit confused as to what I was meant to do. Dad said to me he wanted me to deliver a boat from Viareggio to Saint-Tropez. I got down to Saint-Tropez and they were having their first race of the season. And I bumped into a guy called Daniel Aldetta who worked for Lamborghini. So he said, "Do I have a contract?" And I said, no. So they signed me up immediately. He put me in a boat that weekend. These guys were, you know, chuffed a bit.
Lamborghini paid him as a throttleman, so any team that Lamborghini wanted him to go and throttle on, Steve would go on request.
I was going back and forth and helping them develop the engine for offshore. So it was, that was a really cool time.
In 6 years as a professional throttleman, he's won the Class 1 World Championship.
I won another World Championship in '87. That was with a boat called Cougar, and I was driving that time. Jack Studeville was a crew chief, amazing crew chief. amazing team, bunch of different guys who, you know, have been career offshore people. And yeah, we won it.
Steve, I got to congratulate you. I don't know, it had to be worth the trip. Yeah, it was great. It really was. When we came across that line that last time, it was fantastic. Well, you had 2 great days before this, though. You had to know it was going to happen for you. It was going good. Well, you never know until the flag drops, and when it did drop, we were real happy about it. What about strategy?
I didn't race for a couple of seasons. Dad got sick. He had diabetes and stuff, and his health went down, so I went back and helped them run the company.
It's been taken quite a way, I don't know.
And then I got back into it with Bjorn in Spirit of Norway.
It's off the dock as they come past us here at the commentary position in Aaron.
Schellinger came over with Jim Dyke to race the World Championship. Schellinger's business partner was a guy called Bjorn Ring-Elston, who also wanted to go powerboat racing. And I was just working at Cougar at that point, helping Dad out still. Suddenly I got a call. There was a race going on in Arundel, and it was Bjorn on the phone. He said, "Look, we want you to come and race." I said, "Well, I don't have a license. I don't have anything." He said, well, we'll sort all that out. They sent a jet over for me, which is a couple of hours. Flew on over to Arundel and ended up doing the race. And it just went on from there. And I got on really well with Bjorn, and it just worked. That team worked really, really well.
Spirit of Norway will rely on the world's most successful throttleman, Steve Curtis. But it's the return of Iceman Bjorn Elston that is sending shivers into every corner of the pit lane.
He worked at it, and he made himself the best driver in the world.
Hey, that's Elston and Curtis!
And we had 8 years racing together, you know, which I think we won like 5 championships. We got to the point where Bjorn had been racing for quite a while. I think he'd achieved everything he wanted to achieve. And the Victory team were throwing ungodly amounts of money at offshore powerboat racing. We had a meeting at the end of the year like we did. I think we'd finished second in the championship. Bjorn said, "Well, you know, where have we lost it?" And I said, "Well, unfortunately, we lost it on technology. You've got to look at the budget and you've got to basically double it." And he said, "Look, I love this sport. Love you guys as a team, but," he said, "I'm certainly not going to throw all this money at it to be an also-ran." I think Sheik Hassan got wind of this and went in and bought the team that weekend.
What did you do?
Nothing really. They painted the boat. I got a different set of overalls and got in with Sheik Hassan rather than Bjorn.
Sheik Hassan was educated in Miami. I always used to see these fast boats. Loved the GEICO team. He thought that was sort of the pinnacle with the turbine and wanted to build a boat to race against them. So we started building this project, and just as we got pretty close to finishing it, GEICO caught fire, burnt to the waterline, and that was the end of GEICO's turbine project.
We now have new pictures to show you of the superboat that caught fire off Lido Beach this weekend. Miss GEICO was here for the boat races. Firefighters suspect an electrical malfunction may have.
We were out testing, and we had some good numbers. We were coming towards the end of it, and we were going to bump it up to a couple of really fast passes. So we bumped it up, I don't know, somewhere 180 miles an hour, 185 miles an hour, and there's a little haze in there, which you get in boats, right? But it was like a putrid chemical smell. And I'm like, Gary, I'm starting to get real smoke now in the cockpit. And he's like, "Mate, you're on fire."
They go by us, we're in the safety boat, and we see a little flicker. And in 15 seconds, by the time we got to the boat, the heat, the intensity of the fire was so much that we could barely get Mark and Scotty off, and there was nothing we could do except just watch $1.5 million burn.
You can imagine a crash, but to lose a boat in an inferno is not something that you expect to happen.
The fire department says it took about...
So we had this big Mystic powerboat. At that point, we said, right, you know, what can we do with this thing? So we put some big engines in it and said, look, we're going to go for some records and things along those lines. We designed all this whole project, got it all together and tested it, and it was incredibly fast. So then we decided we were going to take it up to do the shootout. You know, the record was at 225 miles an hour. We were pretty confident we could do it. We went out, it was the second run of the day, came into the chute, nailed it, and the boat wouldn't settle down. You know, we must have been 3/4 of the way up there, and it's all over the place, and then boom, something laid down and took off. And we went, well, that was a bit strange. We kind of worked out that due to really high vibrations, the pin came out of the chute, popped the chutes. We were dragging these chutes along, but we still went through the run at 210 miles an hour. So we said, right, hey, we got to give it another run. So as we're coming back, Mike Fiore was doing his run, and I was meant to run the boat later in the day for Mike. And he said, right, I'm going to take it out and just set a run. So when he took off up the run, and the boat looked fantastic. And I think what happened was they were turned a little bit because of this side wind, and they came within the bluff and straightened it out. And obviously the boat accelerated at that point, and it went over backwards. And I mean, it was a horrific accident. The seat had come loose and sort of bounced him around a little bit, but they took him off to hospital, and we heard that he was, conscious and he was beat up, but he was okay. He was going to be okay. So then we did another run, and obviously you're a little shaken up about that, but you got a job to do. You're focusing on it. Took the parachutes off, didn't even run them. It was hopping a little bit, but we still went through at 244 miles an hour. So all the guys obviously were ecstatic because we'd obviously achieved what we wanted to achieve. We heard Mike trying to talk, but was okay, was stable. And then the next day, loads of people came in and stuff like that. I was actually sharing a room with Mike, so I grabbed all his stuff, went over to the hospital, his bag and all that sort of stuff, and he was meant to be fine. And then he had this later on when they were operating on him. I believe he had a blood clot that blocked up the artery, and he passed away, unfortunately. But it was, from what was, you had the real high of doing the run and getting the speed, it's really bittersweet memories on that one because Mike, we're really good friends and stuff. So yeah, it's good and bad memories.
I'd met Mike and Joe Scro when they came over to race in the P1 Championship over in Europe. That weekend we really, got on well and ended up being lifelong friends from there on.
Mike was kind of the Steve of V-bottoms, and Steve was the Mike of catamarans. So they got along really, really well.
Mike was unbelievable in a V-hull. I mean, he could run a V-hull like no one else. But in a cat, he was a little bit inexperienced. And we were hanging out and talking. He wanted to do some, further the cat range. So I got involved with him on that.
We enlisted Steve because who's better? I mean, Steve is literally the GOAT. He is the greatest of all time when it comes to catamarans.
He wanted to do an outboard cat. So we started designing it. Then unfortunately he had his Al-Thani, passing. And through the different owners, we ended up just about finishing it a couple of years ago. And now we've got the 3738, which is a terrific boat.
He did the whole entire hull design for us. Tunnel design, the bottom design, setup work on the boat. So to have his input and to have him on our team is, it's just incredible.
Losing a ride, essentially, is not an easy thing.
When that boat burnt down, they lost everything. They had to formulate a game plan so fast in order to satisfy their GEICO sponsorship and then to keep their fan base. They have such a huge fan base. To be able to do that, that takes a tremendous amount of effort from a great group of guys that do a great thing for this sport.
And with all those struggles, they are still in the hunt for a world championship.
5:04, the investigation continues this morning into a powerboat accident that ended in the death of one of the racers. The St. Clair County Sheriff's Department is telling us that there was a collision between two boats taking part in the River Classic. That's part of the St. Clair River Fest.
Losing a friend, trying to find reasons of why and how, that was a really, really tough time in life.
So when they had their incident, they did a lot of damage to the boat. GEICO needed the boat to fulfill their contract, and so they called me up and initially said could they lease the boat, the boat that I used to race. At that point the Qatar team had closed down. They were concentrating on the Football World Cup. So I had all the Qatar equipment. Gary actually called me. He said, you know, would I run the boat? And I said, yeah, I'd be happy to. And then, yeah, then we started to build it up. We had a lot of success over those years.
He had a good partnership with James Shepherd, and then Travis came on board. So we had this massive synergy going.
We were racing wake effects. It was a great rivalry going on between those guys.
We had created this team with a DNA for racing, and then they pulled the plug.
To have a run like the Miss GEICO team had was incredible. Luckily, we were fortunate enough to find basically Huski. I'd met Michael through the MTI that he'd bought. They asked me, would I go to Texas and have a look at the boat?
And Steve and myself flew up to Texas and met him at his hangar. And the meeting went favourable. We got the green light to go down to Key West. At the time, we hadn't signed a contract with Huski. Boat ran great. We put on a good show, and Michael was very impressed. By the end of that year in December, contracts were signed for 5 years, and that's where we kind of sit today.
Tell me about the differences joining an established team and building one from scratch.
It's a very different scenario. Building a team is about the base people that you get in on the ground floor.
I've known Gary since he was 15 years old. We get on well together, we speak the same language when it comes down to the boat, you know, so that was like a walk in the park.
In excess of 30 years now, me and Steve have been racing together or against one another.
Travis is a natural driver. I mean, I think he could, well, he does, he drives everything.
There's no one better to be sitting on my left side than Steve Curtis.
It's in a cockpit.
He's walked me through everything. Down there my first year, getting into a 2,200 horsepower offshore powerboat rocket ship.
When that guy puts a crash helmet on and gets in the boat, he is 100% focused.
The whole Huski Chocolate team is amazing. You learn when you get there just what it's like to be on a professional team. The whole atmosphere is something that you can learn off of.
Britt's like a nat, obviously born in a boat pretty much, understands what the boat's going to do and drives because of that.
I always find people that are more mechanically minded, they get the physics of what's going on.
Everybody should feel as important as everybody else on that team, and I truly believe that. If you win, you all win. If you fail, you all fail.
The big thing about a successful team is never getting too high when things are good and never getting too low when things are bad.
What I think keeps me winning and this team winning is, in a way, we're expected to win. If we don't win, someone says, what's wrong? If you do win, people don't say anything. And that's what keeps me pushing. If I ever lost that hunger to win and just wanted to be a competitor, I would give up. I wouldn't race.
You know, you've got to be able to, you know, have the, I guess, balls to give it some when you have to.
So how are you feeling now that you're 60?
Yeah, well, I'm not quite 60, but you know what? I'm pretty good. I never thought this is all I would do, you know, and I think I've been so fortunate to do what I love doing. I've had an incredible life. I've raced all over the world. I've raced with some incredible people on some incredible teams. If it all ended tomorrow, I don't think there's any person that would say Steve didn't have a good run of it. You come into this world with nothing, you go out with nothing. I've just done a lot of good fun stuff in the middle.